Greetings and welcome to another episode of Veterans of the Cedar Valley. My name is Tom Haggerty. We've been trying to include a number of stories with veterans over the last few years on the show. World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. We've had quite a variety of guests on the show. Today we're going to change the format a little bit, and again I'm tickled to have in the studio students from the class of 2016 at Columbus High School who have made the trip over with their classmates to France and Belgium and visited cemeteries and World War II sites and World War I sites. I'm glad to have them with them, and right now I'll just start out by having you introduce yourselves.
I'm Reed Bailey.
I'm Anna McLaughlin.
I'm Francis Hart.
I'm Dylan Tracy.
I'm Daniel Noonanday.
And I'm Ethan Smith.
Thank you guys for being here today. I was telling the director that 50 years ago I graduated from Columbus High School, so you guys take it easy on me today. But first off, I want to congratulate all of you for your dedication in this class. I think it's, what's the name of the class that you took?
AP European History.
And that is a year-long class that you took, right?
Yep.
And then Molly, did other students go with you, or were just 6 of you? How many went?
There was about 17, I think, in our class that we all went over there.
And Francis, did you have to pay your own way, or did the school pay for it?
We had to pay our own way, but the Booster Club helped us out with a scholarship to each of the students.
And Ethan, can you just give me a guess of how many students have gone on this trip from Columbus?
Well, I think we're the 11th class to go on the trip, so probably around 150 or 200 students.
Okay, and Daniel, what was the purpose of you guys going overseas?
The purpose of us really going over to Europe was to grasp an understanding of what it was like in World War II and World War I for those soldiers, and because it's so different from reading a book to actually going there, and so I think going over there really helped us to understand what was going on.
And Dylan, do you think that before you went, you had a different impression of what you were going to experience, and then when you came back?
Yeah, absolutely. When you, as I always say, like seeing is believing. Once you get to like actually see things, then it becomes real and it becomes reality, and you can actually like experience it. So,
Okay.
very much so.
Reed, who went with you other than the students?
Oh, we had parent chaperones as well as Mr. Schneiders, and that's pretty much.
And did you also participate in fundraising for this trip, or was
Yeah.
Did you have bake sales, Molly, or?
We did not have a whole class fundraiser, but I know a couple people have worked really hard to get the money to go on the trip.
Okay, and Francis, what was some of the books that you read? Just name one of them. You studied these books, I think, during the summer before you even started school. What was one of the books? Do you remember?
One of them was Unbroken. It was the story of Louis Zamperini, who was a fighter pilot in World War II, and his plane crashed, and he survived in the ocean, and then he was picked up by a Japanese boat and put in a couple of different prison camps, but eventually lived to tell a story.
And we're going to be showing some pictures throughout the episode here today of some of the sites that you visited over. Now you went to, Ethan, you went to France only, or what other country?
We started off in France on like a little World War I tour, and then that went into Belgium, and then from Belgium we came back into France. So we were in both France and Belgium.
Okay. How long was the trip altogether from start to finish, Daniel?
The trip was about, I believe it was 10 days, and those were 2 days including travel.
And Dylan, when you came back, you kind of did a wrap-up presentation at the school. What was the name of that program, and what did you do?
Our project was Veterans to honor. It was like a project meant to honor those that have served for our country, and especially those who have died for our country. And we basically talked about our trip and showed pictures of our trip, and then thanked all the veterans that were present and remembered all those that are no longer with us.
Yeah. And Reed, do you remember the name of the guest speaker that you had at that program this year?
Yeah, it was
Mr.
McLean?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't remember it, but I was at the program, but I thought y'all did an excellent job.
Thank you.
Both with the speeches that were given and the video that was shown and the honor you gave to the veterans. What did the guest speaker tell you? Tell the audience.
He basically talked about like his story and like what he went through back in World War II, and I mean he gave quite a very good story about him being a pilot and them going on a mission, and it was pretty interesting to listen to.
Molly, did he tell us that he got shot down?
He didn't get shot down, but one of the other planes right next to him got shot down. And so the story kind of went on to say, like, if he was on the other side, he would have been the one that got shot down and eventually died.
And
So.
I think, Francis, he was involved in the invasion of Italy, or did he say Sicily?
Yeah, Sicily.
And then it was interesting how he got up on the stage, and he first started out by looking at the audience and saying, this is overwhelming. You know, it's not what they told me about being a guest speaker. But all right, Ethan, what was the first stop that you made in which country when you went overseas?
So when we first got into France, we stopped at a French cemetery, and then right after that we visited like a small German cemetery.
And who was buried in that cemetery, Ethan?
Well, in the French cemetery, there were the French soldiers who had died, and then the German cemetery were just the German soldiers who had died.
Okay. And did you spend the whole day there, or did you just keep moving from one site to another, Daniel?
We kind of kept moving around. I remember that we went to a place where we saw our first shell holes, and then also we saw our first sapping holes, which was where the British took a bunch of like mines and detonated them underground to make these giant holes.
And Dylan, speaking of giant holes, one of the pictures I think we have shows the students down in a hole, I'll call it. Even though I was in the military, I know what it was. What did you guys do down in that hole? What was the purpose of being down there?
Well, the whole point of us going down into the sapping holes was so that we could get a real feel of how deep they were. Like, you can take pictures and look at pictures, but you never really get a feel of how deep they actually are. Like, entire trees would fit inside these holes, and when you go down them, like, they're really steep, and we tried running up them to see what it would have been like to try to get out of the holes, and it was really difficult. So.
Well, if I remember Mr. Schneider's telling me, your teacher, Reed, when you were down in the bottom of one of those holes, you were allowed or asked or told to run up to the top of it. And he wanted you to imagine what the soldiers went through carrying a 50-pound plus pack. So did you get to do that?
Yeah, I remember he's like, go ahead and make your way down to the bottom, and then run up and see if you can do it in under 5 seconds or something like that, I believe. And it was really steep, and I did not get it in 5 seconds. But
Up and down, he wanted you to do it, or just up?
just up. He just had us walk down it.
Yeah. Molly, did you do the run up and down the hole?
I didn't run down it because I probably would have fell, but
Yeah.
I ran up it too.
Okay, now, not to rat on anybody, but who was the last one in the group that got up to the top of the hill? Francis? Nobody, everybody made it at the same time?
I think everyone made it at the same time.
Okay. What did you get, Ethan, out of doing that? I mean, what was the understanding of that hole?
Well, like we read multiple like books, and we kind of talked about it, like the battles in class and the conditions that the soldiers were exposed to, and it kind of creates a mental picture. But actually being there and seeing the huge holes kind of like brings it all to life.
And Daniel, there was a picture that was sent to me of some of you guys crawling down in it looked like a cement bunker. Did you do that? Have a flashlight and everything?
Yep, I had the flashlight on just my iPhone, and so I was crawling down in these holes with Dylan too, and it was just surprising as to how claustrophobic they were, because you were just in this small enclosed space with a bunch of spiders and rocks all around you.
Ooh, no bats, right?
No bats.
Oh, thank goodness. Dylan, when you were in that hole also, what was the purpose of you guys going in there?
Again, the purpose was to make things real for us. Obviously, shells weren't raining down on us like they were in the war, but it was, like Dan said, still very claustrophobic, and like men had to live in there and work in there day by day without break, and I just can't imagine like doing that during a war. So.
And Reed, the first country you were in, how long did you stay in that country, even though you moved from city to city or site to site?
We stayed in France for a good 4 or 5 days until we went to Belgium.
Where did you stay in France? In hotels?
Yeah, we stayed many different hotels. First one was in the Verdun region.
Okay. And that was because there was a cemetery, Molly, in Verdun?
Yep, and there's a lot of different sites around there about World War One, and so we kind of traveled from our hotel for 2 days, for the first 2 days, around to different cemeteries and battle sites.
Okay, and Francis, when you were at your first cemetery, where would that have been?
That would have been in the city of Verdun.
And who was buried there? Americans, Germans, French?
They were the French who had fought in one of the either the battle of it was the Battle of Verdun, and they were buried in there.
Okay. Ethan, what was the first cemetery that you visited that contained American soldiers?
That would have been the Meuse Argonne, which was a large American military cemetery there. And what was interesting about that is that we were the only American high school to ever like lay a wreath at their cemetery, so that was a great opportunity for us.
And Daniel, speaking of laying a wreath, is that at a ceremony that you guys all conducted, or was it something that they do?
It's something that they do regularly. It's called the Last Post ceremony, and it's celebrated every night in Ypres, Belgium, at the main gate. And so it's just kind of a time of remembrance for all those who have died or have gone missing in the war.
So again, Daniel, was it just the Columbus High School students that were there, or were visitors there? Or?
At the Meuse Argonne, it was just us, but at many of the other Last Post ceremonies, there were a bunch of other people.
And Dylan, when it came to honoring people in those graves and laying wreaths down and ceremonies, there's a picture of all of you guys with other crowd people there. How did they allow you to just go do that, or did they schedule you? Or
Mr. Sneeders actually had to call ahead, especially at the Omaha Beach Cemetery, to get permission. The rules have changed recently, and they want people to get permission so that things are done right and it's all respectful.
Yeah. And Reed, speaking of Omaha Beach, what country is that in?
It's in France, Normandy.
Okay, and what day of your trip were you at that?
That was the very end of our trip,
Okay.
actually.
Don't tell me yet. We'll come back to the end of the trip. But from one of the first leaf laying ceremonies that you did, where did you go from there? Still in France, right?
Yeah, we went from the Meuse Argonne to Ypres, Belgium.
Okay, so you've left
Yeah.
France after that.
Yes.
And what is that Belgium site?
We went to Ypres, Belgium, and where like the battles of Ypres were.
Okay. Was that World War I or World War II, Molly?
World War One, had a lot to deal with Flanders Fields, that battle, and there, like Ypres, Belgium was really renewed because that all got destroyed during World War One, so it was cool to be in that town.
Okay. And Francis, one of the impressive pictures that I saw from your trip was where you guys would take an individual cemetery stone and I don't think you were cleaning it, but you were rubbing the name off or something.
We would take sand and wipe it across the name, and to clean it, and then we would take our rag to like wipe the excess sand off, so then the name would really pop out at you.
Okay. We've arrived at our halfway point of the program, and we're going to take a couple commercial breaks to help pay the bills. Please come back and join us for our second half of visiting with the Columbus High students.
From the world wars to Korea, Vietnam, to the Persian Gulf, Afghanistan, and Iraq, they saw what few others ever saw. But many veterans don't talk about their experiences. It may be because you've never asked. Learn what you can't always find in the history books. Interview a U.S. veteran in your community and submit their audio or video interview to the Library of Congress Veterans History Project. Or share their stories by contributing their original photos, letters, or military documents. Participate so that future generations may hear directly from those who served and better understand the realities of war. Download a field kit from our website and find out how you can play a role in preserving history.
Welcome back to the second half of Veterans of the Cedar Valley. It's my honor to have today in our studio students from the Columbus High class of 2016 who took a trip over to France and Belgium to various cemeteries and military battle sites. And they brought back all that knowledge and they want to share it with us in this half-hour show. Francis, when we left the first half, we were at a cemetery where you guys were explain what you were doing on a cross in the cemetery.
So we would take sand and wipe it across the tombstone, and then take our rag and wipe away the excess sand. So then the sand would be like in all of the letters, and then the name would really pop out at you and make it look very nice.
And that was impressive. Ethan, did you guys find people from Waterloo, Cedar Falls, or from Iowa?
Yeah, in the American cemeteries that we went to, Mr. Schneiders had a list of all of the soldiers who had died that were from Iowa, and each of those soldiers would receive like a flag. Every student had a couple flags that they would put at the base of every grave, and then if the person was from Waterloo, we would lay down a couple roses. So I believe like Omaha Beach and the Meuse Argonne and in Flanders, they were people from Iowa, so we were able to do that for them.
Daniel, how many people from Iowa would have been on the list that you, I mean, how many people from Iowa, do you have any statistics, were killed in, say, a particular battle site?
At the Meuse Argonne, I don't know an exact number, but I know that each student had like a sheet of paper for each Iowan that they had to lay a flag for, and I think the average amount at the Meuse Argonne was maybe like 18 people, and so for 18 students to have 18 Iowans, that's just an immense amount of
And
people.
Dylan, did some statistics, when you were studying this in school before you went over, did you have any idea how many Americans had been killed or in these battles?
Especially for the Meuse Argonne, not very many of us knew about the statistics. Like for the Flanders Fields and Omaha Beach, we went over that a little more, but Meuse Argonne was one of the smaller battles that wasn't actually small. And I was lucky enough to do my research paper over that we do in our class, so I got to know some of the statistics, but we don't really learn about the numbers until you see it at the cemetery in person.
And then your first look read at, say, an American cemetery, what's the impression you got from that?
I mean, my first look, I just got goosebumps because, like, as Mr. Schneider said, these aren't gravestones, they are you, gentlemen. And I mean, that just hit me hard, and like, if I was in that generation, that could have been me there.
And Molly, one day in the morning, you rented bikes or you drove around the countryside on bikes. Explain that and what was going on.
So we took a whole day and went on a kind of a bike tour around France and Belgium. Our tour guide, his name is Carl, and he was really good. He took us around all of different sites, and we kind of stopped at each one, got off our bike, and got back on the bike and kept riding. It was a long day, but it was very worth it.
Did you have any bike troubles?
Yeah, a couple of times chains came off of the bikes and we had to yell stop so we could get some help, but luckily
Now,
no one got hurt.
Another bike question. Did the chaperones or your parents or whoever went with you also go on bikes?
They had the option to, so
But otherwise they could stay back at the hotel
They-
and wait for you
Yeah.
younger students to come back, right? Okay. Francis, we're at Omaha Beach. First off, how do you get to Omaha Beach? How did you guys get to a bus?
Yeah, we had a fantastic bus driver throughout the trip. His name was Tony, and Mr. Sneeders and him have a very good relationship, and he took us to all the different sites and dropped us off at Omaha Beach, and we started the day, we went down to the beach and looked up, and it was just breathtaking to see what those men went through. It was hard for us to climb up just with nothing on our backs, but we couldn't imagine what it would have been like with the Hitler's Atlantic Wall and just gunfire going at you.
So the bus dropped you off by the beach, Ethan, and then you got to look up at what they had to go up against, and you experienced that walking on the beach first. Did you get to the cliffs?
Yeah, we went to Point du Hoc, which was a cliff that American like Army Rangers had to climb during the invasion, and that was incredible because it was literally just a cliff that they had to go straight up, and it looks impossible to climb, but when we realized that they actually did it, it's pretty incredible.
Daniel, when you guys were on the beach, I don't know how you did this, but explain how you drew the word USA. Just how does that come pass? Is it part of your itinerary that day or what?
It's kind of a tradition that all AP European students that end up on Omaha Beach, we always kind of make USA out of rocks that we find on the beach itself. And so that's kind of a real bonding experience and a real remembrance time for those who have died that are from the USA.
And then Dylan, also I think you guys put something in the sand, not with rocks, but what was that?
Well, we had the rocks USA, and then we went and stood behind the rocks and got a picture with that. There was other things drawn on the beach, such as like someone wrote Omaha and spelled that out with rocks. After we did that, though, we went and collected sand so that we could wipe the sand on the gravestones.
Did you have one statement we remember on there? Am I confusing that with something else?
We said that, but we did not write that in the sand.
We'll get to that at the end. Reed, overall, standing on Omaha Beach, what could you imagine that years ago men went through?
It was just crazy to me because Mr. Schneer's he told us to look out at the ocean and then just picture never-ending ships and just as far as you can see, and all ships are just coming straight for the beach. And then when you turn around on the beach, I mean, it's a straight hill going up, and I mean, it just gave me goosebumps just looking around.
And Molly, did you run into residents that lived in the area on these sites, or say around Omaha Beach?
Yeah, we not mostly on the beach. That was pretty much ourselves. But as we went up to the cemetery, we saw more residents coming, like schools coming, and that was cool to see them. And were all watching us and wondering why we were there. And we told them, and they really appreciated it.
And Francis, did you guys get to talk individually with residents, or you guys were the tourists and the visitors? Did they communicate with you?
Yeah, at the Omaha Beach Cemetery, that was where we took the sand and wiped it on the graves. There was a family that came up to me. They were from France, and they asked me what I was doing, and their English was a little broken, but I was able to communicate with them that what we were doing and why we were here, and they were very surprised and appreciated it.
Ethan, did you run into any people that were negative towards you guys?
No, every person that I talked to was thankful that we were there and they appreciated what we were doing.
Okay, and Daniel, one more site that you visited, pick one for me.
The one that I would choose would be Vauquez, and that's where this village used to inhabit a plateau in France. And then when you go there today, you just climb up this giant mountain, and you look down, and then it's just a complete hole now. There's no more village, there's no more plateau, it's just solid ground gone under you. And it's probably a few hundred yards deep into the ground, and that's from sapping.
And Dylan, let's come back now from your trip to Waterloo, Iowa. You flew in from where? Where did you fly out of when you were in?
We flew out of, what was the airport called?
Brussels?
Charles de Gaulle Airport
In France.
In
Okay.
France, yes.
Okay. And that flight took you how long to get home?
About 7.5 hours, I think it was.
To Chicago or Waterloo or?
Minneapolis is where
Okay,
we
all
flew
right.
out.
And then Reed, you guys got back, you're tired and all that. How soon after you got back did you put on your program?
It was that Sunday when we got back. We got back on a Friday, right?
The Sunday that you got back from your trip, you put on
It
your
was 2
program?
weeks. It was
Okay.
2 weeks after.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
you had to have some rest, you know,
Yeah.
but Molly, that would have been interesting. How did the program go? I mean,
So the class usually does it every year, and we have the decision to do it or not. And so when we come back, it was like an official yes, we're doing it because we want to honor them. And so it kind of just goes telling what we did on the trip and showing like our appreciation for the veterans. And then we have the guest speaker, which was James McLean. And then we all made projects, which kind of explain some of the trip even further.
and so Francis, the program was held at Columbus, and speaking of the projects, you all had project boards, and I'm always impressed about the fact that you guys find barbed wire in the woods there, and relics, and you had shells there, and very, very well done projects. Did you do a project?
For the project, like for the Veterans Project, I did a speech over the Flanders Field Museum, or the cemetery, excuse me, and there was a quote it was on the chapel. The quote read, "Greet them ever with grateful hearts," and I based my speech around that, and so that was my project.
Okay, now we're about ready to end this show, and I'd like to just have you guys simultaneously together tell us the two words that you told the audience. You remember, right? Yeah. None of you said it. We remember. It's a very nice theme, and we're about at the end of our show, and I'd like to again thank the students from Columbus High School who have come to join us and share their experience about their trip to France and Belgium to visit memorial sites of the war. And I'd like to invite you back for our next episode of Veterans of the Cedar Valley, and thank you for joining us for today's show.